Welcome back to another episode of Earth is Our Home with Dr. Thomas Blaine. Today we're going to be looking at The Heat is On, so stay tuned. Welcome back to another episode of Earth is Our Home with Dr. Thomas Blaine. Dr. Thomas Blaine is an associate professor with the Ohio State University Extension Program. Tom, as you have been indicating since the summer, in Earth climate to continue to get hotter and hotter. Is this what you expected?
It's exactly what I expected, and I encourage folks to go back. I know you're going to put down below this some of those shows. The last one we did before summer started, where I said we're going to come back in the fall with record high temps. And at the point that I said that, the temperature was just average. And a lot of people were wondering what's happened to global warming. And we're continuing to follow this now because it's a real exciting time. Every single month now, we are breaking temperature records from the satellite era. And when you compare temperature data from the satellite era to earlier periods, it looks like this is the warmest that Earth has been in the past 115,000 years. This is something that's, I think it's a harbinger of things to come. I think in 30 years, we'll be saying this is the hottest Earth's been in several million years. That's the direction that we're headed. So I don't know if many of you remember, I think Patrick and I are old enough to remember the Sonny and Cher song from the 60s, and the beat goes on. I named this episode, and the heat goes on. And I'm going to let the data speak for itself right there. Way out to the right, look what's happened. The October temperature of the lower troposphere, 0.93 degrees Celsius above the baseline. It was 0.9 in September. We went up 0.03 of a degree in October. We're going up every month now. Look how we've come up since January. January was just below zero axis, where zero is deviation from the average for the period. This satellite data period started in January of 79. So well over 40 years, and we're at a record. Now, if this is not a coincidence, this has two causes. One is man-made, and one is nature-made. So if you look at the way it shot up just this year, the rapidity with which it soared, that is caused by the Southern Oscillation, El Nino Southern Oscillation, as we talked about many times before. But the fact that it's at a high, you see there's other peaks. All those other peaks were also caused by El Nino. But look where the peaks were back in the 80s. Back in the 80s, the peaks, some of them were below average for the period. Those were caused by El Ninos also. Why are the peaks higher now? The peaks are higher now because human activities, putting CO2 into the environment by burning fossil fuels, is driving the long-term temperature trend. The ups and downs, and Patrick always likes to note, Tom, every time it goes up, it comes back down. Well, that's partly true. It does not come back down all the way. There's a trend upward, and that's caused by humans. The valleys that you see, look at the valleys in 2018, 2021. Those valleys are above the baseline. They're higher than the peaks were back in the 80s. The valleys in the 80s were down around negative 0.4, negative 0.5. And then Patrick asked me, he said, well, this isn't a lot of difference. I mean, from negative 0.4 on the left to positive 0.9 on the right. That is a lot. That is quite a lot. That's about 1.4 degrees Celsius, which is about 2.5 degrees Fahrenheit. And you've got to remember that over most of the last 8,000 or 9,000 years, global temperature hasn't fluctuated more than about 2 degrees Celsius in 10,000 years. 2 degrees Celsius. And look here, we're seeing 1.4 fluctuation up in just 40 years. So that is quite a lot. And the higher we go on global temperature, higher we go, the higher the probability that we will encounter a global climate disaster.
But one of the things that I've found is that we are also innovative, and that 10 years ago, if you mentioned global climate change, there were a lot of naysayers and a lot of people who dismissed it. And I think as we have moved along, more and more individuals are aware that there is something to this global climate change. On the same token, we are seeing many, many people rise to the level to deal with these set of circumstances. Are you also seeing that? Or are you seeing sort of a blasé sort of attitude?
I got to be honest. What I'm seeing is somewhere in between. Okay. In other words, yes, I think largely through programs like mine. I've gone into the heart of Appalachia where coal is the industry. And they came to hear me speak, and nobody in the audience believed that global warming was happening. And yet, by the end of my talk, all of them believed it was happening because of the way I explain things. I have credibility, I have data, and I'm really not an alarmist. Okay. So, we have fewer people saying, no, this is no big deal. We have a lot fewer people saying that. But on the other side, the people who can bring us technology was your other side, who can bring us technology and innovation that can cause CO2 concentrations to stop rising. Even if they can't bring them back down, do we have people working on ways to get them to stop rising? Because this is being driven by CO2 increases, in the environment. And as I've told you before, and I'm going to show you here, Patrick, yeah, they've signed a lot of agreements. They've come out with a lot of plans. But if we don't lower emissions or reduce concentrations, none of that matters. None of that matters. So, yeah, we're innovative. We come up with a lot of great things. We have a wonderful living standard, in much of the world now because of technology. I wouldn't want to live at any other time in history. I wouldn't want to live without the things technology's given us: automobiles, planes, refrigeration, electricity, air conditioning, heating. I wouldn't want to live without these things that we've got. So, yeah, of course, innovation is really important. But as I'm going to show you a little bit, when it comes to the bottom line here, the only way to get this to stop rising is to get CO2 concentrations to stop rising. And no, there's no progress. I mean, zero. You can take it from me. All the conferences, all the photo ops, all the leaders of all the countries, they have a big time, it's headlines and all that. They have made no progress whatsoever. None. We're 1.43 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial baseline. That would be the temperature right about the time of the Revolutionary War. You go back those days in the late 1700s and the early 1800s. That's the pre-industrial. We're 1.43 degrees C above that. Now, you probably heard a lot about this. We need to keep global temperatures below going up 1.5 degrees, which is we're almost there virtually.
Why must we keep temperatures below 1.5?
Okay, I'm going to paraphrase now because I am not convinced that this is correct. What I'm doing is citing a lot of ecologists, biologists, and so forth, geologists. They say if we hit 1.5 degrees Celsius warmer than the pre-industrial baseline, right there, it's written right there for you to see, that will set into motion tipping points and runaway feedbacks. So what are they talking about? Well, one feedback, as we go up in temperature, we melt more snow and ice from the surface. The white surface where it's covered with snow and ice reflects sunlight back to space and causes Earth to stay cool. If you melt that snow and ice, you open up the blues of the ocean, the greens and browns of the terrestrial areas, and that sucks in the heat and holds it and contributes to warming. So a lot of them are saying at that 1.5 degree threshold, it's going to start so much melting of ice and snow in places like Greenland, the Alps, the Rockies, Antarctica, that that will cause more and more warming. It's a feedback. It's a runaway. You melt some, it gets warmer. That melts more, it gets warmer still. Now, I'm not saying I agree that that's the case. I don't see anything magical about 1.5, but you will if you follow this in the news. And all I'm saying is, during this heat wave that we're in, you saw how fast it's gone up, right? From 0 all the way to 1.43. It's going to go to 1.5. There's no question about that. You told me to be careful about predicting. We're going past 1.5 in the next year. That will cause a lot of the melting that will lead to a more rapid increase in temperature. Another tipping point is that as you get up to 1.5 degrees Celsius, you melt a lot of permafrost in Siberia and places like that, where the ground's always frozen. It's been frozen for, thousands of years, and it's got methane in it. If you melt that, you'll release that methane, which is another greenhouse gas, and it'll cause warming to go up faster. That's another one of these tipping points. They're still talking like we can keep it below 1.5 above the pre-industrial, even though we're knocking on the door. And because of this El Nino, temperatures going up the way they have, we're definitely going to get there. So now a lot of them are saying, well, it's 2 degrees. Let's try to cap it at 2 degrees, because that probably won't be here for another, it depends on a lot of factors, but maybe 2030. But I'm telling you now, look at that. Read that right there. Keeping temperatures below the 2 degrees C mark looks impossible as well. Even though that might not happen till 2030, we would have to cut our CO2 emissions now to prevent concentrations from going up to lead to 2 degrees. We would have to cut them now. We have nothing up our sleeves to do that. That's why I said zero progress. Yes, there's windmills. Yes, there's solar panels. There's hydroelectric. We need them all. Okay. But CO2 concentrations are going up.
I understand the necessity to keep the CO2 down, but our world is not just faced with climate change. It is faced with many different major problems. They range anywhere from asteroids flying around, possibly hitting us. We are in wars. We have polluted water. We have starvation in certain areas. We have countries that, in order for them to maintain their level of economy, have to use these greenhouse gas machines. And so it's not a matter of just selecting global climate. I think it's a variety of different things that make our world precarious.
There's no question that that's correct. As I've said before, though, one of the reasons that we're dealing with this is that if we continue on the trend we're on with CO2 concentrations and temperatures, we run a non-trivial risk of climate catastrophe by the end of this century. And if that happens, all bets are off on everything else. So we're doing that now. We also did nuclear war, and we may go back because
the whole Middle East seems to be on fire again.
That's correct. And so last year we did the war in Ukraine because we thought that posed an existential threat with nuclear weapons. The Middle East could produce a catastrophe. Yes, there are many threats to Earth's continued existence as we know Earth. Where there's existential threats around us, but because even if we get past all those other things, we might not make it past this. We're running, at the way this trend is going up, we're running a non-trivial risk of a climate catastrophe that The first signs of it would be maybe around 2050 or 2060 with crop failures. Widespread, 9 billion people. That's a lot of mouths to feed. And if agriculture fails because of climate, that's the first step toward disaster. Okay, so basically what I'm saying is, at the rate we're going, that half a degree from 1.5 to 2, which is 9/10 of a degree Fahrenheit. See, that's not a lot, really, when you think about it. But a 9/10 of a degree Fahrenheit above where we are is going to put us in jeopardy of a climate catastrophe. Just the difference in the climate that I think we're seeing now. I think we're going to notice more in the next few years. Really mild winters in Ohio, summers ceasing to be pleasant, filled with heat and humidity, migration of many species from south to north. Ohio with a climate like Tennessee has when we were younger or up to now. Imagine 30 years from now, Ohio's climate like Tennessee. A lot of animals that live in Tennessee can't live up here. Cottonmouth water moccasin, a good example. It's the cousin of the copperhead. Copperheads live up here, but not the water moccasin. But they will be with the 2-degree increase. Okay, and so that's what I'm saying is the higher the temps get, the greater the likelihood we will trigger a climate catastrophe. That will include extinction of species, movement or migration of invasive species, and worst of all for us, if you say, why do I care? Well, the bottom one, if that doesn't get your attention, then nothing's going to get your attention. If we lose agriculture. And here's the way it's going right now. Here's what's driven us up. As you see, for many years, climate was held, temperature, I should say, was held down in 2021, 22. Global temperature was kept down by that blue in La Nina. And I kept telling people, don't be all relaxed about it, because as soon as that goes away, and it's going to go away, temperature's going to shoot up. And that just a little bit of red right there is what's been responsible for that huge increase in temperature you saw. If you want to go back to the beginning of the show, that's what's done it. And here we go. Patrick, have a look at it. No sign of any kind of flattening CO2 since 1957. It's just up, up, up. And despite the agreements, despite the windmills and, the solar panels, you can see it as well as I do. This is driving global temperatures because CO2 is a greenhouse gas that traps heat in the atmosphere. And that's the long term. We're going to keep you posted as these months go by, as this El Nino proceeds. How high is the temperature going to get? Are we going to bust through that 1.5, or are we going to bust through 2 even? We'll just have to wait and see.
I know that you're available to Zoom in to groups, to if you can visit with groups or talk with them on the phone. Why do you do that?
I'm paid by the Ohio State University to educate the public. I'm an outreach educator. I'm associate professor in the Department of Extension. We are the outreach arm of Ohio State University. Our job is to reach out to the general public and teach the kinds of things you might learn in the classroom if you're a student. And that's really important for land-grant universities because the taxpayers help support us. It's not just the people that go to college. Taxpayers help support us. They have a right to receive direct education. I think a more educated public is a better public. And with a topic like this that's so important, I think that people should learn this. I've been blessed. I've been very lucky. I've got a PhD and I've been teaching all my life. It's been a great career. And I just want to take this message as far as I can. And yes, I would be glad if your county commissioner somewhere, or township trustee, extension educator, or with a civic group, and you want to call me to address your group with any aspect of climate change, there's my information. I would love to do it.
Hey, we're talking with Dr. Thomas Blaine, an associate professor with the Ohio State University Extension Program. Feel free to get in touch with Tom. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks a lot, Patrick.